really like to welcome our next speaker. Do you know what information your APIs are leaking? And joining us on stage for this session is Jason Kent, who's the hacker in residence at Sequence Security. And he'll be talking about security and compliance risks associated with the increased use of health monitoring APIs, as well as ensuring APIs do not inadvertently expose sensitive data. And you're the hacker in residence.
That's
so
correct.
I'd love to know a little bit more about what that is, so you can tell us about that.
Well, if you go to a fancy hotel in Vegas, they have an artist in residence, right?
Right, yeah.
I'm the hacker in residence.
So, so they give you a nice place, sit down and say, do your hacking, but for good, not evil.
Right. Yeah.
So you're like in Star Wars, you're the Jedi, not the Darth Vader.
Right. So hackers have gotten this negative impression in the press. Everybody thinks that we're terrible people. But it turns out we're just regular people that like to break into things.
But what I really like about the hacking community is they have a dress code. So if you're a bad one, you wear a black hoodie.
Right.
And if you're a good one, you wear a green hoodie.
Well, if you're a good one, I don't know what you wear. The airline lost my luggage on the way here, so this is what I flew here in.
Well, you look great.
Normally, I would wear a suit or something akin to a suit, but no bags.
You look fabulous.
Thanks.
And I'm sure the content will more than distract us from that fact.
Is there a thing for me to...
Yes. Is there a clicker? That's a good question. I will make sure that
Someone disappeared with a clicker. I'd advance the slides, but I can't. So after that little bit of back and forth, my name's Jason Kent, and I'm the hacker in residence at Sequence Security. Hackers are the kinds of people who like to find solutions to problems, and that's something that I do for sure. That doesn't seem to go. There we go. One more? Some more? Any more? It's a trick he's playing on me. He handed me a thing that doesn't change things. I can't get it to advance. So what I do at Sequence is I take an adversarial view of what's happening at our customers. So we get attacked all the time as beings and people that have anything hosted on the internet. You're constantly being attacked. So what I do is I look at those attacks and I try to infer what it is that the attacker's been trying to do. Sometimes it's very simplistic stuff like I want to buy the next whatever toy, right? PS5s, shoes, that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's a little more advanced. They want to do things like steal credit cards, right? One of the challenges that we've seen with APIs lately is there are gangs, physical robbery gangs, the kind of people that smash doors and go inside and steal things and run out. Well, how are they finding out if those things are available? Every place you shop now will tell you, yeah, we have 4 of those available in the store. Imagine if you could look those APIs up and then figure out how much inventory is in the store, smash the glass, run in and run out, right? There's no point in going in there if there's nothing there. So what we're seeing is people use APIs for all kinds of things. Are your APIs leaking information that you don't want to know? It's a great question and one that I've gone ahead and tried to answer. So I work for Sequence Security. We do API protection as well as bot defense and stuff like that. What we're seeing is that more and more organizations are launching more and more APIs. When you look at a standard web application today, it almost always has the same kind of API routes built in the back end as every other application that you'll see out there. But what you don't really see is that there's shared infrastructure on the back end so that the mobile app works, right? The website works, the third-party integration works. And so we're seeing APIs exploding out there. We are seeing more and more organizations that are worried about compliance. The panel that was here prior to me, they were talking about finance and compliance to all these different standards. And here's another one, right? You've got a bunch of data that's getting transmitted back and forth. Does it carry whatever the thing is that you're interested in? Patient information, account information, credit card data, whatever, right? So what we're asking ourselves is, have I adopted an API standard, or have I adopted something that's suddenly creating more risk? We're seeing that everything digital has APIs built around it. When you onboard a new employee to your organization, they've got to get into your human resources system. They've got to have access to, you know, whatever benefits that you might be giving them. And those things are going to be built into API-based applications. In the States, when we sign up for our health insurance, it's usually once a year and you elect for the things that you want. It just happened for me. And I thought it was interesting that the app that I have to look at all that, I can't sign up for my insurance in the app. I have to go to a website, right? But I know the back end's all the same, right? Why won't they let me? And it turns out they wanted to use more than two-factor authentication. They wanted 3 factors of authentication, and that tells me something has gone on, right? But when we start to look at all these interconnected microservices and stuff, you're starting to see these numbers like 142 billion applications that people have installed on their phones. Each one of those applications obviously connecting to some mobile API. I teach a class for OWASP on how to take mobile application packages apart so you can find the API endpoints to attack, right? And the majority of the endpoints that you're going to attack in this way are going to error and teach you how to get in, right? Error, API key missing. Okay, got to go get an API key, right? Error, username's wrong. Oh, I've got the wrong username. And so on and so forth, right? At the core of everything that's out there digital, we're seeing more and more APIs. A really good example of this is Tesla's, right? Everybody here is pretty familiar with the fact that there's some car manufacturer called Tesla, and they make this electric car. But did you know that a lot of Teslas ship with features already built into the car that you turn on, right? Self-driving is one of them. It's like $8,000, right? Or 80,000, I don't know how to do the conversion. But it's a very expensive thing. Well, wouldn't it be neat if I could get into the API and turn the self-driving on? Wouldn't it be neat if I could get into the API and turn it on for everyone, right? And there's more and more of those things. There's an electric bike called Zero, same thing. They ship you bigger battery than you can use until you pay for the battery. They ship you the ability to fast charge if you pay for it, right? Heated handle grips if you buy them. But it's all there when you get the bike. It just turns on through APIs. Makes me wonder if my boss will buy me a $30,000 motorcycle so I can try it. Maybe he will. Tool of choice. We're going to do more and more and more APIs. But look what's happening. We're seeing massive growth in things like health endpoint APIs. Is the service on? Why is that? Well, a lot of times services die, but they die in a way that you can't tell they're dead, right? My banking website still works, but I can't get logged in. Wouldn't it be nice to know, if you're the operations person at a bank, that the login page isn't working? And so we're instrumenting ourselves with all of these new kinds of APIs that allow for us to see, are things on? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Hackers love this stuff, right? I don't want to attack a target that's off. I want to attack one that's on. And if you got a health monitoring endpoint that's telling me that it's up, great, especially if it's got any information in it, right? Tells me what I need to do in order to get logged in. We're seeing a lot of use in OpenAPI, which is the correct way to say it, but there's a few of us with gray in our beards, so Swagger files are something that we all probably are aware of. The use of Swagger is going up and up. Swagger is a map of your API. You should have a Swagger file for your APIs. You should not host it publicly, right? If I find your Swagger file, I know that you use gets on this endpoint, and then I can't put a post against it. Or maybe I can, right? So I can test those things. This is supposed to be an authenticated flow. This is an unauthenticated flow. What does that mean? Well, I'll log in, I'll be not logged in, I'm going to try all these things, right? The Swagger file is a map for me to do things. We're also seeing massive increases in login endpoints. Inside of your APIs, you're calling third parties, and that might need authentication. It could very well be that you're using an API key. It could very well be that that key can be blank, right? Testing for these things is important. and knowing what's out there is really important. We see a lot of risk associated with health monitoring and open API endpoints, as well as the login endpoints. So who's being attacked? Who is getting hurt by having a lot of APIs out there? Well, there's a few logos down here at the bottom, but my favorite one is Peloton, right? Did anybody here hear about the Peloton attack? It's a couple of folks. So Peloton, they make a bicycle, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's in your house bicycle in case you want a bicycle at home. It's to exercise, right? And it's built into this big ecosystem, and you can be pedaling your bike like you're riding in Tour de France. It's amazing. The system that it's all built around had a flaw. We call that flaw BOLA, Broken Object Level Authorization. But BOLA, all it means is I log in as me and look at your stuff, right? And in Peloton, the case of Peloton, they got onto the API, realized that they could look at someone else's things, so they went and found a reporter and looked their stuff up and sent it to them. It's a good way to get into the news, right? The researcher that did this could not get Peloton to call them back. And as somebody that's done a lot of responsible disclosure, have a way for a hacker to tell you it's broken, right? Peloton wouldn't respond back to the hacker. Same thing with John Deere. They just wouldn't talk to them. John Deere's case was they took a production database and copied it into staging. And then they hacked the staging database and knew every piece of equipment that every John Deere customer had. And those of you that have been following the news lately know that when Russia attacked the John Deere dealership and tried to steal the tractors, they wouldn't go anywhere because they can remotely shut them down. Imagine if I can get into the system and remotely shut down every single John Deere tractor on the planet, right? This is the danger in APIs. So what do? Well, what we recommend is go out there and find out where your API endpoints are as step one. Those of you that are in the compliance game that have to live by various security compliance standards, realize that your very first step is inventory, right? Can't fix stuff that you don't know. And so the very first thing that we suggest to people is go inventory your APIs. Figure out where they are. Figure out which health endpoints you're running. Are you running GraphQL? Are you running any of these things that automatically build API endpoints like Swagger? So that way we can have a good understanding of what's out there. How many of you struggled with Log4j probably in December, right? Same hands are going up. You're a busy guy. Log4j was a mess. Why was it such a problem? We didn't know where it was impacting us, right? We all had to go out and find it. Well, this will help you in that, right? Because guess what came down the line 4 months later? Spring for Shell, right? Like Spring Framework vulnerability. Oh, Log4j is still out there. A lot of people don't realize this. I just wrote a blog post on some research that I did. I scanned the top 50 websites on the planet, and 10 of them came back with Log4j. They weren't directly impacting the organization. It was happening off of a third-party API that they're calling. So if you're logging, great. If you're moving those logs out to an analytics platform like ServiceNow, you might have a problem, and it's something that you should be addressing with them. I've got a scanning tool that will go out and scan your APIs for this to see if it's something that's out there. If you stop by the sequence booth, I can run it. It takes about 10 minutes and give you the results back. After you've found your APIs, you now need to figure out what's in them, right? So we recommend taking a look at runtime, what's happening inside your APIs. What we do is instrument your system with your Swagger spec, and every single transaction that flies through, we check it for spec conformance. So if you're worried about compliance, and you're worried about something like GDPR where you're capturing data from an end user that could be used against them later, we can look at the data and say, hey, you're out of compliance here, or I found a credit card number, or whatever it is that you're interested in there. And then the last piece of it is to throw the traffic away when it's doing something bad. We see a lot of sensitive data in our clients' environments, in banking environments, on OFX channels. We see all kinds of transaction data that probably shouldn't be there. In just standard like retail and hospitality environments, we see things like credit cards, Balmora tokens, whatever it is that you are interested in payments, we see stuff on there. So really understanding that there's a lot of possibility for sensitive data is important, but looking at the data that your APIs is giving you is even more so. So how do you minimize risk here? Figure out which data you're using and how you're using it. I always tell people, if you give an attacker a piece of information, they'll use it against you, right? So if you're giving me an error message that says error bad username, I can use that to enumerate good usernames. If you give me an error message that says error bad password, and I know I've got a good username, now you got a credential stuffing attack going on, right? Because I can just use the error messages to say whether the attack is working or not. And so that's something that you really have to have a good plan for, and we recommend developing policies that say things like use generic error messages and define those error messages in your specs if you can. APIs are the #1 target for malicious use out there. Account takeover, ATO, is something that most of my clients deal with on a regular basis. They're being attacked all the time. Somebody's trying to guess the usernames and passwords because they want to get to the gift cards. They want to, perform transactions, whatever that is, steal Bitcoins. Right? A good friend of mine just did a whole thing on what it takes to do this in the real world. Coinbase, there was a guy that had about $24 million in his Coinbase account, and this organization decided, we need to go get that money, right? I say organization because it was a 19-year-old kid, a 15-year-old kid, and a 20-year-old, right? And what they did was they went to a T-Mobile store and they ran inside and stole the manager's iPad. They ran out of the store, handed the iPad, so they paid some meth head to run in the store and steal the iPad and run outside, hands it through the window in a taxi cab, taxi pulls away. Guy in the back of the taxi switches out the PIN, or the SMS card, SIM card, that for the phone that he owns. They then go into his Coinbase account, do a password reset. What happens? Two-factor. They send the PIN, the one-time PIN, over to the phone that they just cloned off, and now they have the PIN, they reset the password, and they stole $24 million. And you know who, we know it was a kid because as soon as he finished it, he tweeted about it. I just stole $24 million. Dumb kids. It's people like me that don't get caught because I don't tweet about this stuff. What are you going to do? Like I say, lots of different kinds of malicious activity that happens. Content scraping is still one of those things that happens. We have organizations that do things like list automobiles and relist automobiles, and they're always getting content scraped because it's a heavy market. They want different activity there. What we see, though, is when I want to start an attack like this, I'll maybe go look to see has someone else pulled one of these attacks off. And what we're seeing more and more of is things like, go to their user forum and log in. Then take that token, because that's a super token over in their other system, and you're going to use that session ID, right? And so they're going through your APIs and figuring out where you've made business decisions and where there could be logic flaws. And so that's why they end up like this. Account takeover is one of those things that, a lot of organizations deal with. It causes things like lost revenue. It causes customers to lose confidence, but it also aggravates your employees. It's hard to go to work every day if you know that it's a losing battle, right? So getting ahead of this is really important. What we recommend is that you go through a process similar to this where you discover what you have out there. If you don't know that you have it, go find it first, then protect it, right? So you need to do two levels of discovery. One is from the outside in and one is from the inside out. So instrument yourself to see, is anybody using your APIs maliciously? And then you can defend against those things. This is the slide. I've seen a lot of phones come out. This is the slide I always throw up for pictures, right? These are the 10 things that if you're in the middle of an API project or if you're about to start an API security project, these are 10 items that you really want to take a good look at. I'll draw your attention to number 5. OWASP is actually working on this. If you're not a member of OWASP and you're worried about application security, you should be a member of OWASP. But we have an API top 10 that a lot of us participate in and have created and curated for you guys. And realistically, these are the things that you have to really pay attention to. And the reason I know that this is an accurate document is the attacks that I see hitting our customers follow that top 10 list. And the number one thing is BOLA, right? So we see that it actually mimics the real world pretty well. So it's a great thing to run through. So the last thing is, you have APIs, or maybe you do, or maybe you know someone who does. APIs are everywhere, and there's something that we have to try to get a handle on and understand. Are these APIs causing damage or risk to our organization? If you'd like to have an assessment of your APIs, swing out by the booth. I'll happily run it for you. And I can give you some information about, are you leaking information, or are you telling me that you have good attack endpoints? And if you don't, good job. But let's look at the next domain. There might be another piece that's in there. Like I said, if you want to swing by the booth, I'm happy to run a scan for you, tell you what's out there. My name's Jason. It's been great to be here with you guys. Thanks.